You know, my dears, after so many years of life, I learned a very important lesson that I want to share with you. For a long time, I was that person who couldn't stay still. I remember it like it was yesterday. I would wake up at 6 a.m. and immediately start doing something. Cleaning the house even when it was already clean, reorganizing cabinets that didn't need organizing, and even offering to help neighbors with tasks they could do on their own. I used to think, Mrs. Smith from the corner always says I'm a very active person, never sitting still, and that made me feel important, useful. But you know what happened at the end of the day? I was so tired I could barely enjoy my favorite TV show or give proper attention when my grandchildren came to visit. It was on a Sunday afternoon, after spending the entire day busy organizing the kitchen drawers for the third time that week, that I realized I was missing life's most precious moments. My little granddaughter had invited me to play, and I said I was too busy. When I saw her sad little eyes, something changed inside me. Today, at 70, I've learned to choose my activities better. Of course, I still like to stay active. I do my crafts 3 times a week, participate in the senior exercise group on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and tend to my small garden. But now I do it because I really want to, because it brings me joy, not just to keep myself busy. And you know what's most interesting? I discovered that some moments of doing nothing are precious. Now I reserve time to sit in my rocking chair, watch the birds in the backyard, and even take an afternoon nap without feeling guilty. When my grandchildren show up unexpectedly, I drop everything I'm doing. After all, what's the point of always being busy if we miss life's most special moments? So, my advice to you is, don't confuse being busy with being useful or important. True value lies in doing what really matters, what brings genuine joy to you and those you love. Oh, how well I remember the time when I couldn't pass by a store without buying something. Let me tell you a story that happened to me and made me rethink this whole spending habit. It was a regular Tuesday. I was coming back from the pharmacy when I saw a sale on pots and pans. How wonderful! I thought, they're 30% off. I didn't even care about the fact that I already had a cabinet full of them at home. I bought the entire set, 6 beautiful pans, all shining. When I got home, I didn't even know where to store them because, as I said, my cabinet was already packed. It was my grandson Tommy who opened my eyes. He came for lunch on Sunday, and seeing the pans still in their box, asked, "Grandma, why did you buy more pans when you only cook with 2 or 3? Right then, I felt so ashamed, you know. He was right. I started to notice that much of what I bought was on impulse, to fill a void or because it was on sale. I had clothes with tags still in the closet, cleaning products stored that ended up expiring, and a collection of picture frames I never used. So I did something that changed my life. I got a little notebook and started writing down everything I spent. Everything. Even the coffee from the bakery went in the notebook. At the end of the first month, I almost fell off my chair when I added up the unnecessary expenses. You know what I did with the money I started saving? First, I put some aside. You never know when you'll need it, right? Then, I started investing in things that really made me happy. I paid for a painting course I always wanted to take, managed to visit my sister who lives in another state, and even started taking my grandchildren for ice cream every Sunday. Now that's money well spent. Today, before buying anything, I ask myself 3 questions. Do I really need this? Do I already have something similar at home? Could this money be used for something that would bring me more happiness? And I'll tell you something funny. Those new pans I bought that day, I ended up donating 5 of them to the church bazaar. I kept just 1, which I use to this day to make that bean stew my grandchildren love so much. The real treasure, I discovered, isn't in the things we buy, but in the experiences we live and the moments we share with those we love. And you know what? My bank account is grateful, and my house is much more organized without so much stuff. Oh, my dears, this is a lesson that took me a long time to learn, but when I did, my life changed completely. Let me tell you how it was before. I remember like it was yesterday. It was a Saturday morning, and I had a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. The bus was 15 minutes late, and it seemed like the world was ending. I got so nervous that my blood pressure went up. I arrived at the office stressed, fighting with everyone, complaining about the driver, the traffic, life. And you know what happened? The doctor was running behind schedule, and I still had to wait another half hour. That day, a lady sitting next to me in the waiting room, seeing my nervousness, told me something I never forgot. "Dear, Will you remember this delay a year from now? It was like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on my head. I started thinking about how many times I had lost my peace over little things. The neighbor who didn't return the cake pan on the promised day, the grandson who spilled some soda on the couch, the remote control that disappeared and was under the cushion the whole time. Today, when something like this happens, I take a deep breath and ask myself, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Most times the answer is no. The other day, for example, I was making a cake for my great-grandson's birthday. The cake didn't rise as it should. These things happen even to someone who's been cooking for 50 years. In the past, I would have cried, gotten nervous, fought with everyone. But you know what I did? I laughed, made another cake and turned the failed one into pudding. Everyone loved it and got an extra dessert. I learned that life is too short to waste time stressing over small problems. Now, when something goes wrong, I think, is this really a problem or just a setback? If it's just a setback, I take a deep breath, have my chamomile tea and let it go. And I'll tell you something funny. Since I started taking things more peacefully, even my blood pressure improved. The doctor even reduced my medication. Coincidence? I don't think so. So, my dears, if there's one thing I've learned in all these years, it's that peace of mind is worth more than any reason to stress. As my granddaughter says, relax, Grandma, everything works out in the end. I want to share with you something I only understood after turning 70 and how I wish I had learned it sooner. But it's never too late to take care of ourselves, right? Throughout my life, I was that person everyone came to when they needed help. Mrs. Johnson, can you watch my kid today? Mrs. Johnson, help me make snacks for the party. Mrs. Johnson, can you lend us your carrot cake for the afternoon tea? And I never knew how to say no. I remember a specific day that changed my way of thinking. It was my little granddaughter's birthday, and I had promised to make all the sweets for the party. I had a bad cold, but even so, I stood all day making chocolate truffles and coconut kisses. By the end of the day, I felt so sick I couldn't even go to the party. I missed the joy of seeing my granddaughter blow out the candles, all because I didn't know how to say, "Sweetie, Grandma isn't feeling well today." It was my oldest daughter who gave me a wake-up call. "Mum, you've always taken care of everyone, but who takes care of you?" That question kept hammering in my head for days. Then I started making small changes. First, I created my special corner at home, a comfortable armchair near the window, with a small table beside it for my tea and books. Every day after lunch, I take an hour just for myself. I read, do crossword puzzles, or simply watch the street movement. I also started taking better care of my health, marking appointments for physical therapy exercises, which I always used to postpone, walks in the park with my friends 3 times a week, and I even treated myself to a monthly massage, a luxury I had never allowed myself before. And you know what I discovered? When I started taking better care of myself, I had more energy and willingness to help others when they really needed it. It's like they say in airplane safety instructions, put on your oxygen mask first, then help others. Today, when someone asks me for something, I first consult my body and my disposition. If I'm not feeling well, I say with kindness, not today, but maybe another time. And the most surprising thing is that nobody stopped liking me because of it. On the contrary, my relationships became even more genuine. As my granddaughter says, "Grandma, you look younger now that you've learned to take care of yourself. And you know something, I really feel that way." So this is a story I need to tell. You know, when we want to please everyone and end up taking on more commitments than we can handle. That was me for many years. I remember well a week that almost drove me crazy. I had promised to help at the church fair on Monday. Tuesday I was volunteering at the nursing home. Wednesday was prayer group. Thursday was baking day for the charity bazaar. Friday had senior group meeting. Saturday was the neighbor's birthday. And Sunday was family lunch. Phew, just remembering makes me tired. That's when something happened that made me rethink everything. In the middle of this hectic week, my youngest granddaughter called me crying. "Grandma, today is my school presentation. You promised you'd come." And you know what happened? I had completely forgotten. With so many commitments in my head, I ended up missing a precious moment in my granddaughter's life. That night, I sat in my rocking chair and made a list of everything I was doing. I realized that half of the things I did more out of obligation than desire. I was always running, always late, always tired. Then I made a decision. I would learn to say no. It wasn't easy at first. We always think we'll disappoint people, don't we? I started slowly. When they invited me to something, I started saying, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." This gave me time to think if I really wanted to participate. I created some rules for myself. Only accept commitments that truly make me happy. Keep one day of the week free just to rest. Don't schedule more than 2 activities on the same day. Reserve Sunday mornings for my family. And you know what I discovered? People understood. Some even told me I had inspired them to do the same. These days I participate in fewer things, but I enjoy each moment much more. Last week, for example, they invited me to 3 parties on the same weekend. In the past, I would have tried to go to all of them and ended up exhausted. This time I chose to go only to the one that really mattered, my great-grandson's birthday. I went well rested, enjoyed every moment, played with the children, and still had energy to bake a cake the next day. As my daughter says, "Mom, you learned that you don't need to be everywhere at once." And it's true. Life becomes much more enjoyable when we carefully choose where we want to be. My dears, this is a delicate subject, but a very important one. I'll tell you a story that happened to me and changed my way of seeing relationships. For more than 20 years, I maintained a friendship that I now realize did me more harm than good. She was my neighbor, I'll call her Mrs. Brown. Every day she would come for coffee, but it wasn't that pleasant coffee time, full of good conversation, no. It was to gossip about others, criticize my house, my way of being, and she would even go around telling my personal business to the whole neighborhood. I remember the day I had a surprise party for my 70th birthday. Mrs. Brown arrived early, looked at the decoration my daughter had made with so much love and said, "My, what a simple party at Mrs. Wilson's birthday from number 42, there were many more decorations." At that moment, something inside me said, "Enough. You know what's worse?" I kept putting up with it because I thought, "Oh, she's lonely. Poor thing, she doesn't have many friends. What will others think if I distance myself?" And so it went, year after year, feeling increasingly heavy after each visit from her. It was my grandson, a psychology student, who helped me understand. He told me, "Grandma, you don't need to maintain relationships that only bring sadness to your heart." That was like a light bulb turning on. I started slowly. First, I became less available. "Today won't work for coffee. I have a doctor's appointment. This week I'm very busy." Then, when she came with gossip or criticism, I would change the subject or gently say, "You know, Mrs. Brown, I don't feel comfortable talking about other people's lives." Over time, I naturally distanced myself. Was it difficult at first? Yes. Did I feel guilty? Also. But you know what happened? I started having more energy for people who really made me feel good. I began participating more in the church's craft group, where I met Mrs. Green, a true friendship, the kind where we laugh together, cry together, and help each other grow. Today, in my 70s, I learned that good friendship is one that makes you feel good after the person leaves, celebrates your joys without envy, respects your boundaries and your way of being, keeps your secrets, makes you want to be a better person. And most importantly, I learned that we don't need to feel guilty for choosing our well-being. As my daughter says, "Mum, peace has no price." And she's right. My dears, today I'll talk about something we all face, changes in life. And look, it wasn't easy for me to accept some of them. I remember like it was yesterday when my daughter said she needed to move to another city for work. I was devastated. Every Sunday she would come for lunch with the kids. It was our tradition. I spent 2 weeks barely sleeping, thinking about how my life would be without those noisy Sunday lunches. But you know what happened? The change I feared so much ended up bringing good things I hadn't imagined. My daughter taught me how to use the computer for video calls. Now I not only talk to her every day, before it was just on Sundays, but I also learned to use the internet and even made online friends in the virtual knitting group. Another change I struggled to accept was when the doctor said I needed to change my diet because of diabetes. "What do you mean I can't have my sweet treat after lunch anymore?" I got angry, I confess. But this change made me discover new flavors. I learned to make healthier desserts, and you know what? Some turned out even tastier than the old ones. One of the biggest changes was when I needed to use a walking cane. At first I felt embarrassed. "A cane? I'm not that old." But my grandson, always clever, decorated my cane with colorful stickers and said, Now Grandma has a stylish cane. Today I laugh when I remember my resistance. My cane has become my adventure companion. I learned that changes are like seasons. They come whether we want them or not. The secret is, take a deep breath when change arrives. Give the new a chance. Look for the good side of each situation. Don't be afraid to ask for help when needed. As my friend Mrs. Green says, life is like dancing swing. If you don't follow the rhythm, you'll step on toes. And she's right. Today, in my 70s, I've learned to dance to life's music, always looking for the good side of the changes life brings. My dears, today I'll talk about something that took me a while to understand the importance of: a good night's sleep. You know that saying, sleep is for the weak? What nonsense. Sleep is for the wise, that's what it is. I remember when I was younger, I would stay up late watching TV shows, then get up early to make coffee for the whole family. I thought I was making the most of life that way. No way. I lived with dark circles under my eyes, grumpy, and drinking coffee all day just to stay awake. There was one time I gave my family quite a scare. I was cutting vegetables for lunch and dozed off while standing. Luckily, my daughter-in-law was with me in the kitchen and managed to grab the knife before I hurt myself. That's when she told me, "Mom, you need to sleep properly. It's not normal to be dozing off like this during the day." The doctor was straight with me. "Ma'am, sleep is just as important as your blood pressure medicine. If you don't sleep well, no treatment will work properly." So I started creating a routine to sleep better. At 7 p.m. I have my last coffee of the day. After the evening news, I make chamomile tea with honey. I put on my warm pajamas, read a little in bed. I discovered I love poetry books. And at 10 p.m. it's time to turn off the lights. At first it was difficult, you know. I'd toss and turn in bed, thinking about the 1,000 things I had to do. But over time, my body got used to it. And you know what I discovered? When I sleep well, I wake up more energetic, I have more patience with my grandkids. My memory improved. Even my blood pressure became more controlled. The other day, my granddaughter slept over and said, "Grandma, your room is so lovely, so cool quiet with that lavender scent of yours." It's true, I learned to make my bedroom a cozy little corner for sleeping. Dark curtains, a soft fan, and always a sprig of lavender from my garden on the nightstand. One funny thing I noticed, those problems that seemed huge at night after a good night's sleep become much smaller. As my daughter says, "Mum, sleeping is like restarting a computer. Sometimes that's all we need." Now, when I see someone proudly saying they sleep little, I shake my head and think they'll learn someday. Because there's nothing better than waking up rested, ready to enjoy another day God gives us. My dears, we've reached the last chapter, and I want to share something very special I've learned over all these years. Everyone has their own path. For a long time, I was always comparing myself to other people. It was always like this. Mrs. Cleed already has 3 great-grandchildren and I only have 2. Mrs. Regina makes prettier cakes than mine. Mrs. Lords's house is always tidier. And you know what that brought me? Only sadness and anxiety. I remember well the day this lesson became clear to me. It was at a meeting of the senior citizens group. We were all showing our activities. Some did crochet, others painted, some danced. I was feeling bad because my crafts weren't as beautiful as the others. That's when Mrs. Josefa, the oldest in the group at 85, said something that changed my life. Each flower has its time to bloom, and all are equally beautiful. That moved me. I started to realize that I was wasting time looking at other people's gardens instead of tending to my own. Today at 70-something, I finally understood that. My time is different from others' time. My achievements aren't smaller just because they're different. Each wrinkle on my face tells a unique story. My way of loving and caring is special in my own way. And you know what? When I stopped comparing myself, I started discovering talents I didn't even know I had. My cakes may not be the prettiest, but they're my grandchildren's favorites because of the flavor of love I put into them. My house may not be the tidiest, but it's where everyone feels truly at home. To end our conversation, I want to leave a special message for you. No matter how old you are, it's always time to learn, to change, to grow, each at their own pace, each in their own time. As my 5-year-old granddaughter says, "Grandma, you're the best grandma in the world." And you know why? Because I'm her grandma, unique and special in my own way. And so I end my stories, thanking you for accompanying me on this journey of memories and learnings. Always remember, Life isn't a race, it's a dance, and everyone has their own rhythm to dance to. With love, your friend who learned it's never too late to be happy in your own way.